covering the world of professional wrestling. This is The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the latest episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. As always, I greatly appreciate your ongoing support. We are in the midst of fall season. The crispness in the air, the leaves on the ground, the horror movies, the candy, the costumes, of course, at Halloween, and the pumpkin ale. I know it's polarizing to some. I love it, and I'm a craft beer enthusiast. I've been to some of the best breweries across North America, and I love a great pumpkin ale. The spices in there, there's just nothing that beats that. So if you want to see all about that, you can follow me on my personal social media account at Chris Toplack on Instagram. But if you want to follow me for everything to do with pro wrestling, it's at The Signature Spot on Facebook. Give me a good old like there. Follow me on Instagram at The Signature Spot. And at Twitter, it's just me, at Chris Toplack. I also have the at The Signature Spot account, but I'm most active on my personal account on there. We will get to NXT shortly. I'm joined by Ryan Droste of comicbook.com. We're going to review the debut episode of NXT on USA. But first, a big announcement. AEW has confirmed that Dynamite will be the name of their weekly TNT series. I now anticipate an influx of wrestling fans saying, Dynamite! That's a JJ on Good Times reference. Anyway, moving along. When the WWE conducted its first NXT tapings on May 17, 2012, the promotion was merely considered to be a glorified farm system that would develop talent for the main roster. If you look at Raw and SmackDown, many of the biggest stars spent time in NXT. Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, The Fiend Bray Wyatt, who is hot as a flame right now, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, Ricochet, Aleister Black, Big E, the list goes on and on and on. Fast forward over 7 years later, and NXT has become a top-tier brand in the world based on their devotion to compelling yet straightforward storytelling with a prominent focus on the stellar in-ring product. You can't forget about that. A farm system, no more. And I've attended dozens and dozens of pro wrestling events featuring nearly every major promotion, but nothing compares to the NXT takeovers I've attended or the well-oiled machine that was previously the NXT tapings. Now, of course, it is live. I attended those last October at Full Sail University. It was $10, and I got to see 4 weeks worth of tapings. It was incredible. And as you know, I try to show as little bias on this program as possible. But I have unapologetically stated that NXT is not only my favorite pro wrestling brand in the game today, but perhaps my favorite ever. Yes, I'm that passionate. So, how did NXT's debut on USA Network go? A full review in mere moments, but I'm not alone. My next guest covers WWE, NXT, and AEW for CBS Interactive and, of course, comicbook.com. His work has been featured by Sports Illustrated and What Culture. He also appears on the pro wrestling podcast, Top Rope Nation, that covers both the past and the present. He's Ryan Droste, and you can follow him at Ryan Droste on Twitter. That is Ryan, D-R-O-S-T-E. Apparently, he loves the craft beer as well. Perhaps I'll bring that up with him. We review NXT's debut on the USA Network, and that starts right now.
And now, our featured guest.
According to Showbuzz Daily, last night's WWE NXT premiere on the USA Network drew 1.179 million viewers. Now, to put this into context, Raw does about 2.2 million. So a very solid number when you consider this. Ryan's joining me. I just gave you a nice warm introduction, by the way. How do you feel about this number?
Surprised. If I was WWE, I'd be pretty happy about it. I think a lot of us were expecting a number around 900,000, maybe a million if they were lucky. But to get to that 1.179, number 4 for the night in cable in the target demographic, the 18 to 49. I mean, nothing to snub your nose at there. That's a solid number. So yeah, I think USA is probably pretty happy about it too.
This is so off the beaten path, but when I looked at that number, the first thing that came into my mind, remember when TNA Impact had Hulk Hogan, and it was the new regime with Eric Bischoff, and they drew like a 2.1. And then you look back and it's like, how could have you gone from that all the way down to what? It was like 100,000 at one point. It's just like, what a wasted opportunity. So you look at that, and then, of course, in context, as long as NXT can continue to keep this momentum rolling, that's a solid number, and USA will be very happy. Same with Vince, same with all the sponsors.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about this on my podcast about how, people assume everyone watching the main roster is aware of NXT, and they're really not. So you definitely got some curiosity factor going here. I mean, I think domestically there's about 1.2 million network subscribers in the United States. And so for this show to do almost 1.2, there's no way every network subscriber was watching this, right? So they're getting a couple 100,000 at least people tuning in just out of curiosity that aren't really probably very familiar with the product. They might know some of the top names and everything, and we'll get into some of that when we run down the show here. But I think there was the curiosity factor. I think they did a good job promoting it, and they got a real opportunity here.
Great episode to get them hooked, by the way. I do believe NXT is really a see it to believe it type promotion. Again, for those who have been exposed to it for the very first time, they get to see that, hey, these are straightforward stories with a prominent focus on stellar in-ring product. Very different from what we see on Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought they did a good job showcasing why it's such a different product on this show too, right from the start.
Well, and it started with Triple H kicking off the show. Of course, it was focused on his eyes. And as we know, that's where the emotion comes from, especially if you're Kevin Dunne or Vince McMahon preaching this constantly. He said, "We are not your kind. We are here. We are live. Our NXT." And then the camera followed him out. He walked through the curtain, of course, Full Sail University. The audience there, they exploded. And a little bit different with the set there. There's no entrance ramp, and there's no stage anymore.
Yeah, right away, a lot of this felt different. I don't know if they positioned the cameras a little differently too, but I noticed just the whole setup just felt different outside of the ramp. I think they had the lighting a little different. Like they dimmed it around the arena during the matches, which was a pretty cool look. But I noticed a big, like, just this show felt a lot different right from the start.
And not to put a tinfoil cap on, but I was looking at that Titantron or that screen thinking, is it bigger or is it just me?
Yeah, it might have been, actually. I mean, you take away that ramp, frees up some room, right? So it's possible. It definitely did look a little different. I would agree with you there.
And what better way to kick off NXT's debut episode on USA Network than with the Women's Fatal 4-Way? I believe a true representation of the brand. The winner earns a shot against Shayna Baszler for the NXT Women's Championship. As we know, it was Candice LeRae pinning Mia Yim with a Poison Rana. And then following the match, Candice was confronted by Shayna, Marina, Jessamine Duke on stage. But to her credit, LeRae did not budge. She did not back down.
Yeah, I was, I'll say right from the start, I was a little bit nervous that this one went out first because I wasn't sure how the audience watching at home would respond. Now, the Full Sail crowd was awesome. They really put over these four from the get-go, so that ended up not being much of a concern at all. But I think anyone watching this match would have been very impressed by all four women, and they seem like stars because of the crowd response. I think Io Shirai is just absolutely awesome. Yeah. This heel turn has invigorated her career on so many levels. She's one of the most interesting characters, I think, in the entire promotion. And that goes for main roster as well. And I thought they had a good match. I mean, this wasn't something that was like takeover level, off the charts, but very good. A TV match for them and a great way to start the show, I thought.
And as you noted with Io Shirai, of course, she doesn't need a friend. She doesn't need anybody. I believe she's probably next to Tessa Blanchard as the best female wrestler on the planet. Would you agree with that?
I think that's probably a fair statement. I saw Tessa Blanchard here where I live perform live, about 2 years ago. And at the time I was shocked that she wasn't in WWE or NXT. I know she would work like some spot shows for NXT at the time. But it's pretty surprising that they never signed her, especially with the family connection and everything. But hey, props goes to Impact on that one.
Definitely. And something that should be worth noting here, Candice LeRae is a fresh matchup for Shayna. That was part of my concern too. So of course, Io dropped a couple, Bianca Belair fell short, and Mia Yim and Shayna, I don't believe they shared that great chemistry at TakeOver. I was there live in person, but Candice is the perfect underdog opponent to go up against the dominant submission magician champion, and that match takes place in 2 weeks from now for the women's championship.
Yeah, I agree on the TakeOver thought. So Mia and Shayna was kind of a disappointing match, to be honest with you. But I thought here on the big stage, Mia Yim, she kind of got a chance to come out and redeem herself. And she definitely contributed positively to this match and appeared like a star as well. I think Candice is the perfect choice here. I think that was the right decision to have her go over. I think on the babyface side of the women's division, nobody can really rival her right now in NXT. So I think they're doing this match on October 2nd, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be going head to head with AEW.
Ooh, that's going to be a good one. And then we had a video package that aired promoting a match between two big boys, Keith Lee and Dominic Dijakovic. Apparently that's taking place next week. I believe this will be match number 3 as part of their trilogy. Hard hitting. What's going to happen next week?
Oh, man. Keith Lee is going to open some eyes. Now, here's a guy, he's going to benefit from the 2-hour show weekly because it's just been so difficult. This roster is so deep, and it's so hard for them to feature people. To even get on the TakeOver card requires a small miracle.
It does. It's difficult.
If you don't have a title belt, good luck. It's very, very difficult. But Keith Lee, here's a guy on the independent scene making headlines for years, literally. And they finally sign him. And I just kind of feel like he hasn't had his chance to shine yet. And now moving to 2 hours, here we go. This is where he opens the eyes. And I'm looking forward to this and just seeing him in action more.
Definitely. With the bright lights, he's going to step up. And same with Dominic Dijakovic as well, too, who I laughed because I saw him and I instantly thought, is he going to break out the Taz mission next week? Didn't he ask Taz for that on Twitter? And Taz was saying, hey, let's take this privately. You don't need to ask me publicly here and call me out.
Try to be a respectful worker there.
And then next up, if you blinked, you missed it because Cameron Grimes defeated Sean Malouda in mere seconds. And obviously, he doesn't get paid by the minute here. It was a double stomp finish. Formerly Trevor Lee in Impact Wrestling, many have not been exposed to Cameron Grimes.
Yeah, I think this showed the power of the squash match. It can still be useful. I'm not quite sure what I think of this character yet. I guess he's picking up the old discarded Cowboy Bret Hart gimmick, maybe.
Oh, my God. It was George. I remember it was George Scott that pitched it, and Bret's like, I don't want to be a cowboy. And you know it in that tone, that dismissive tone, being like, I just want to wrestle. I don't want to be a cowboy. Where I come from, you got to be a legit cowboy to ride a horse and have this gimmick.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll be able to digest this in the coming weeks. But right now, I'm not sure how I feel, but I do like squash matches in the right scenario. So I thought this was a good use of the new character.
Next, we had the Velveteen Dream versus Roderick Strong for the North American Championship. The finish came with Adam Cole hitting the super kick during Dream's Purple Rainmaker attempt. Strong took advantage. He hit the Dream with End of Heartache for the victory. The prophecy, Ryan, has been fulfilled. Undisputed Era now possesses all the gold in NXT.
We finally got that moment that heading into Toronto at TakeOver. We were wondering if we get it on that show. Not quite. Delayed it a few weeks, but pretty cool to see those guys with all the gold. I know there was the rumors for months that they could be main roster bound, but with the USA deal, no reason to send them up there. Definitely not. So I was really looking forward to this one. I'm a huge fan of Velveteen Dream. Getting him out there in front of the bigger audience and everything. I think I tweeted out during the show, people are going to be shocked when they see this guy and what a cool gimmick it is. And I don't think he's hurt by losing the title by any means. He's been a top star now in NXT for a while. And looking forward to seeing him more on a weekly basis. But Roddy Strong, talk about a solid worker. Yeah. This was I thought the match started off a little bit iffy, not in a bad sense, but it seemed like they weren't really clicking early. And then as they got going, it definitely ended on a high note. Ended up being a really good TV match. And as far as this, being the very last thing in the first hour before they went off the air on the USA Network, what a great way to go off the air on your first show. I don't think they could have booked 1 hour on USA any better than they did here, starting with that women's match, which was a good, hot action-packed match. They go to the squash match, and then this one, I think it got about 20 minutes at the end of the first hour. I mean, it was paced well. They did what they needed to do, and boy, they worked it tight, though. They went off the air, I know. Right after.
It was tight because I think I told you, I transitioned over to WWE Network, and all of a sudden, it just says, Roderick Strong is the new North American champion. I'm like, what? I just missed the entire ending. So I had to go back, watch that, then move along to our next match. But as you noted, if anyone was tailor-made for that moment in the spotlight, it is the Velveteen Dream, one of the most complete talents under the WWE umbrella, always rises to the occasion. Excellent near falls. They're really heighten the overall drama, chance of this is wrestling. And something I really wanted to note that I actually jotted down. I normally never jot down too many notes, but that really creative sequence, I loved it. So Strong trapped Dream in the ropes, landed various running forearms. He hit a tiger driver, transitioned into a Boston Crab. It was beautiful, and it displayed that Roderick Strong is a legit talent.
Oh, yeah. And there was several sequences in this match I thought that were creative, but that one definitely stands out for sure. I love a good Boston Crab.
Same.
Always a good visual.
I know it is. Pete Dunne. I guess he's now more of a permanent fixture here on WWE NXT versus Iturra. I haven't really seen much of him. Now, of course, for those who have not been exposed to Pete Dunne, he is technically the longest reigning champion of the modern WWE era. So he goes up against Iturra. I've really only ever seen him on television about once. He ended up tapping out after Dunne bent his fingers in directions they don't belong in, not doctor advised.
That is such a brutal looking move.
It is. It's legit, though.
It's a great visual.
It is.
It just makes you cringe.
For anybody that actually says, oh, that's such a BS finisher, if I locked you in that right now, and I'm not some Mr. Technical ability over here, you'd probably go, that hurts. I might tap out.
Yeah, the way he snapped those two fingers and takes the forearm down to the mat. I mean, I'm squirming in my chair watching that. It looks brutal, but no, it's always good to see Pete Dunne, and I thought this was a good one. A good way to start the second hour on the WWE Network that I finally accessed after about 20 minutes of trying.
Oh, geez. So you avoided all the Twitter spoilers because I saw you tweeting for a while, and then you kind of went dark, and I thought, something's going on here.
Yeah, so my friends Kyle and Justin that I do the Top Rope Nation podcast with, we were texting, and we were all having these issues. Like, are you having problems getting on the network? And they were too. And then all of a sudden, Justin is like, "Oh, son of a! I just saw a huge spoiler of something that happened."
Oh no!
And then Kyle a second later is like, "I just saw it too." And I'm like, "All right." I set my phone down across the room. I didn't look at it again. I kind of predicted it, though, to be honest with you, because I started thinking like, all right, who could it be? And then when the first thing I see is Pete Dunne, it makes me start thinking about the UK division. And I'm like, I bet it's Walter. And that's, as we saw, what ended up happening.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a moment. But how about this? I'm actually excited about it. The captain of Team Kick, Dakota Kai, returns to NXT next week. She's been out of action for about 9 months after sustaining a torn ACL. Many tend to forget about her. She's legit, too.
Yeah, I thought the promo package was good. And to be honest with you, when they were bringing people up to the main roster, which now they really don't have the need to do as much with this 2-hour show on USA, but in the past, when we've seen like the NXT talent kind of fail to get over on the main roster, I think one of the biggest problems has been the introductions of those characters and not featuring like promo packages like this to get the more general audience familiar with the NXT talent. And something like this goes a long way to get people excited to see those characters. So anyone watching that wasn't familiar with her, which I think is probably a good majority of the audience last night, this was effective. So I am looking forward to seeing her back too.
Yeah, if you don't know who they are, if there's no story, there's no background, how can you cheer or boo them? It feels like somebody appearing on a house show at that point.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. They could use another popular woman on the babyface side with Candice LeRae. So this is going to be good for the brand, I think.
Xia Li versus Aaliyah. I'm not poking fun at Aaliyah, but it feels as though she's been in NXT for a long time, and she benefits from this as well, too, because I never foresee her going to the main roster. I just never saw it. So this is perfect for her, obviously, now with Vanessa Bourne. It was a one-sided bout. Lee pinned Aaliyah following a tornado dropkick. Short but sweet, that's really it. I thought it was one of the only misses of the evening.
Yeah, this was easily the weakest match. A little sloppy. There was a botch kind of towards the end. Zaya, if I remember right, she came off the ropes, and it was kind of a little awkward, but she goes on to win the match, which, as you noted, it's probably the only way to go here with Alaya's past in the promotion. But it was what it was. I wouldn't say like bad, but easily the weakest thing on the show for sure.
Now, have you ever heard of Denzel DeJournette? I've never heard of this individual before. So I knew, okay, something's going on. Are we going to have yet another squash back to back? That's not properly paced. So, of course, he makes his entrance. All of a sudden, instead of Kushida, it's Alexander Wolf, Marcel Barthel, and Fabian Aichner. And that is Imperium for those who don't know. They're from NXT UK, which I believe, and I've stated this many times on the program, the most underrated brand in the world. They proceeded to beat him up. And, of course, you hear the burner. The Ring General, the leader of Imperium, Walter, made his illustrious entrance, joining his brothers. Kushida eventually confronted him, saying, hey, I had a match. I want to get paid here. And he went in and he beat up Aichner, and he beat up Wolf. He beat up Barthel. He got the better of Walter, but he bowed out, and wisely, too, I may add.
Yeah. Now I love this. Man, as you were singing it there, I got to note, I just absolutely love Walter's theme song. It is such an awesome moment when he comes out. And this was all really well done. I agree with your sentiment on the UK brand as well. It's just one of those things where there's so much product out there between all of the companies, not just WWE right now. It's so hard to get around to seeing them all. And NXT UK is the brand that I'm always like, if I had a little bit more time, I would never miss a show. And but that takeover they had recently, heck of a show. Walter, of course, everyone talked about that match with Tyler Bate, which was just an unbelievable match. But here you got the prospect of Walter and Kushida, which in many ways is kind of a dream match.
It is.
You got the European star and Walter, and Kushida, the longtime Japanese star. Really, really looking forward to this possibility.
And it will be a missed opportunity if NXT does not give us Imperium versus the Undisputed Era at War Games. How about that? 4-on-4. Ooh, sign me up.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Hopefully the way the show closed, which we'll get to in a second, we'll start maybe a build to that.
Ooh,
but
that's true.
God, I sure hope so, because that would seem to be one of the top matches they could do with the UK brand here. So we'll see.
Ryan, color me surprised. Lio Rush is back in WWE. I never saw this coming versus Oney Lorcan. And returning Lio Rush faced him in a number one contenders match for the WWE Cruiserweight Championship. Of course, we know that Drew Gulak is the reigning defending Cruiserweight Champion. So Lorcan was really methodical. He targeted Rush's knee. He refused to tap. Instead, Rush hit this desperation Spanish fly, which is still insane when you witness it. And then he hit the Dragon's Call, which was that split-legged frog splash. And here's the shot. Lio Rush, the man that was in the proverbial doghouse, is all of a sudden a top contender for the Cruiserweight Championship.
The one move that stands out to me in this match was that springboard stunner that Lio did, like off the, I think it was the bottom rope, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
The bottom rope. That was a really cool visual. But I was also surprised to see him. Funny note, when my buddy Justin was texting us about the surprise that he saw, turns out when we recorded the podcast, myself and Kyle found out that it was the Lio Rush surprise he was talking about. He wasn't even talking about the Walter thing. And we were like, really? That's what you're so shocked about? And he said, yeah, he actually expected Walter on the show. And this was the most shocking thing to my buddy. But yeah, I mean, I was surprised to see him too. This ended up being, I thought, the best match of the 2 hours. This is the one that I enjoyed the most. If you didn't see it, it's worth going back and watching for sure.
And then, of course, you had Oney Lorcan hulking up at one point, too. I thought, okay, he's a shoo and he's going to win the match. So still a big surprise there, making it unpredictable that Lio Rush returns, and now he's the number one contender. So we move along. Headlining the show, it is Matt Riddle versus Killian Dane in a street fight. These two cannot get enough of each other. They have unfinished business, and it's been that way for weeks, if not months by now. The fight went backstage. It was an absolute brawl. Walter got involved. Somebody knocked over his tea. I think it was Matt Riddle. And he's like, hey, that's enough. You knocked over my tea or my pop. I think that's what it was. Some kind of beverage. Imperium, the Forgotten Sons, the Street Profits, Pete Dunne all got involved. There were many more. Action spilled to ringside. I don't know why I pictured Tony Schiavone in that WCW game that was horrendous saying, this is absolute mayhem.
Yeah, WCW Mayhem. That was a game, I think.
Yes, it was. I remember playing it going, this commentary is the worst because they introduced it for the first time and he just kept repeating that over and over.
Oh, man. They made some really bad games after Revenge. They really hit the high note early on that generation of consoles, and then it was pretty much all downhill.
Yeah, like if you basically had to summarize WCW from like 91, 92 to maybe like 98, after that, it's like, and then nothing existed. It disappeared. That was it.
Yeah, what was Walter doing here backstage? Well, Imperium in general, they had this
I don't know.
table set up like outside in the parking lot next to the semi. Like,
yeah,
I have no idea. That was kind of bizarre, but yeah, they spilled out backstage, and all of a sudden, those three guys are just like sitting around the table or whatever, or four guys, I should say.
Yeah,
and yeah, just all hell broke loose. It was a memorable way to end the show.
Yeah.
It's a non-finish, but you got everyone involved.
It's so weird, though, too, because obviously we know that there's different shows and different pilots that are filmed there. When I was there with my wife last October, I was checking out those areas because I was always morbidly curious about, like, how do they transition in? Is it actually live? Is it pre-taped? It is just right out there, but it's just so hokey because they're sitting essentially on glorified patio furniture, right? Like, can you get these paid performers or paid wrestlers, you know, maybe a bit of an upgrade now that they're on the USA Network?
Yeah. For sure. No, but yeah, this match, I would say the Riddle Dane feud is one that really hasn't done a lot for me. Riddle's a guy that I'm looking forward to seeing featured more too in the same way as Keith Lee, because I mean, coming into NXT, this is a guy who's probably the biggest name on the independent scene, and he just hasn't really had the big matches yet, and he's been there a while now. So,
and we saw what he did against the Velveteen Dream. I adored that match. I wanted to see more of that Matt Riddle, even though it was a losing effort. That was his best showcase to date.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So after this took place, because it kind of just went off air, and I thought, oh, okay, I guess that's it. I mean, I was completely satisfied. William Regal appeared in front of the live crowd at Full Sail, and basically he announced that the winner of their street fight, because they're going to have a rematch, I believe, next week, is going to face Adam Cole for the NXT Championship. Now, if you're looking at it from babyface versus heel perspective, it seems pretty obvious that Matt Riddle's going to win this match, but you never know for sure.
Yeah, no, that seems most logical, you would think. So
during a 2-hour show, NXT, I believe, featured about 7 matches. The one thing that I took away more than anything else, it was so well paced. And Raw and SmackDown, I know that there's a lot more going on, should take notes on that to say, this is how you pace the show. This is how you digest the show.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see because, I mean, this is always one of the talking points. I've said it myself. You know, NXT television has always been very good compared to Raw and SmackDown, but they'd have the benefit of being pre-taped, only being 1 hour. But I got to say, coming out here with the first live 2-hour show, it was just as well paced as those pre-taped 1-hour shows. So if they can keep that up, I mean, this is going to be must-see television every single week. I'll be interested to see how long it takes them to move this show on the road and to get out of Full Sail. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I feel like the Full Sail crowd does add a lot to it, but in the long run, when you got AEW in these 10, 15,000 seat arenas on the other channel, I feel like NXT is going to have to do that too.
To a traditional fan, if you're tuning in, you're seeing all the baby faces and all the heels receiving big applauses. And I'm thinking, what? Like, I know kayfabe is, basically dead in a lot of respects, but come on, it's natural to hate somebody, to boo somebody. But Adam Cole shows up, or Roderick Strong, cheers. Velveteen Dream, cheers. So yeah, I feel as though they do need to eventually move away from Full Sail. Let's be honest, they've been spoiled. So as much as they can complain and say, well, they're moving away, that will always be home base. But it's good to take it on the road and allow fans to be exposed to it in person because, like I mentioned off the hop, there is nothing better, and I've been to dozens and dozens and dozens of pro wrestling shows, than an NXT takeover or the Full Sail tapings previously in person. Nothing compares to that.
Yeah. No, agree. I've never been to one of their television shows. I've been to NXT house show, but never been to a takeover. I'm thinking about going here Survivor Series weekend in Chicago. We shall see.
You should do it. Why not?
Yeah.
I don't think you know this, but I don't know if it's actually going to work out, but I do have 2 tickets to AEW Full Gear in November the 9th. It's in Baltimore, and that's about an 8-hour drive from where I am, so I have to work out the details, but I have secured the tickets, so I'd like to see what that is like in person as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of AEW, you obviously cover them via comicbook.com. That's also where anybody can find all of your coverage on WWE, NXT, and of course soon, AEW. Also, you are the host of Top Rope Nation with your 2 friends on there, covering both the past and the present. Do you have anything coming up on the show that you want to plug?
So we do the main show. It usually comes out on Fridays, and that's just, like the standard Top Rope Nation. I think episode 116 was the show this week. Then we do the classic shows. We've got a Patreon page, patreon.com/Top Rope Nation. We call it Top Rope Nation Classics, as you mentioned, where we go back and we review the old shows. We talk context of the time, what was going on in our lives at the time the shows aired. We recently did Super Brawl 2, WCW Super Brawl 2. Ooh. We did Backlash 2002. And our next classic show is going to be over the very first WCW Nitro in 95. We thought with the Wednesday Night Wars starting up, that would be a good retro show to do. So you'll be able to check that out on our main feed, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We always put out the first 10 minutes, like a preview of those shows that we put up on Patreon. But the standard, the numbered shows, if you will, those go out, free of charge, like every other podcast, every single week. We rarely miss a week. And it's a lot of fun. We've been doing it since 2016 now. So quite a while.
Wow. He's Ryan Droste. And from one craft beer enthusiast to a craft beer aficionado, I say cheers and toast, and I hope to have you back on pretty soon.
Absolutely. A lot of fun. Thanks, Chris.
You're listening to The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
That was a fun discussion with Ryan Droste. You can follow him on Twitter at Ryan Droste, Droste. And also follow his podcast. I'm not just saying this because he's on the program, but I advocate for it. I'm a fan. It's well-produced, well-researched, and very intriguing. It's at Top Rope Nation on Twitter. Give it a listen and tell him Chris sent you. So that's it. We covered a lot on this edition of the program. Had a great chat, had some laughs. We can also enjoy WWE NXT on demand if you subscribe to WWE Network. I went back, I watched some moments and some matches. Still holds up. I look forward to the future of that show and, of course, AEW on Wednesday nights in just a couple of weeks. If you would be so kind, like, share, subscribe, no matter where you listen to it. You know the drill. Tell your friends, family, and of course fellow wrestling fans to tune in on a weekly basis. And until next Thursday, happy trails to you until we meet again.
This concludes another episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. For new episodes, subscribe on YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. And don't forget to follow The Signature Spot on Facebook for exclusive clips, polls, and opinions.